Dovakin, Alexin los farin, Wahadain, Vokul, Mafreka, Aspal, Akvinorok, Pagran, Furason, Zindrozan, Dovakin, Vahin, Kogan, Mutral, Uzra, Nu, Kudu, All, One, Bak, Lingravod, Akfinte, Bosik, Fontofin, Kain. Dovakin, Alexin los farin, Wahadain, Vokul, Mafreka, Aspal, Akvinorok, Pagran, Furason, Zindrozan, Dovakin, Vahin, Kogan, Mutral, Dovakin, Alexin los farin, Wahadain, Vokul, Mafreka, Aspal, Akvinorok, Pagran, Furason, Zindrozan, Dovakin, Vahin, Kogan.
Dragonborn Saga, A Rise of the Dovakin, read by Simon Sky. Book 1, Part 1. It was a dragon. Seriously, a fucking dragon. Huge, black as coal, eyes red as blood, and it looked right at me. Straight into me. Wait. Hang on, I'm getting ahead of myself for this particular tome. This particular road that I started on began as just a regular day for me. I was at work in my local supermarket. Well, if you can call a multi-billion euro stores all over Europe mega company local, pottering away on the fresh meat counter. I was wearing my standard dark blue uniform, over which I had a white chef's coat. I wasn't a chef. And a butcher's red and white striped apron. I wasn't a butcher either. And that hat. I hated that hat. A dark blue fabric net thing with a stupid brim that was either in your eyes, or you pushed the brim up so it looked like you had a weird plant pot on your noggin. Stupid bloody thing. I ignored protocol and didn't bother with the hairnet either. Yes, I know, naughty naughty. Despite my hair easily being longer than regulation go without the hairnet length. I just tied it up in a mid-skull ponytail and shoved it under the damn thing. I was about 4 hours into my shift and finding myself at the lovely task of putting cold, very cold, lamb's liver, blood and all, into a plastic container. Liver has a consistency not unlike congealed vomit, I find. Despite being quite partial to the taste, especially with grilled rasher, mashed potato and gravy, but that does not mean that I like the feel of it sliding around my fingers, the sensation not dulled in the slightest by the stupidly tight latex glove. Do I whine a lot? Sorry about that. Anyway, as I'd said, I'd completed about 4 hours of this shift, 2/3 of the way to freedom and then home, to 2 dogs, a warm fire, and some evening TV in the form of anime on the laptop, all legally sourced and totally not pirated, of course. So who am I? Well, these days I have many names that are more titles, really, but back then, so very long ago it seems now, I had just one, Fionn. Okay, I had a surname, Otrasic, and a middle name, Peter. But seeing as no one, save my mother, who still full-named me when I'd done something stupid, ever called me Fionn Peter Otrasic, then the forename would do. I was of just under 6 feet in height, being a respectable 5'10", and still quite slim, though my early 20s diet of pizza and beer had begun to tell around the middle. I was goofy and geeky, the best way, and I had hair that was showing far too much grey for a man my age, was dyed copper red, and had been so many colours over the last decade that its original was a distant memory, and when not hidden under a hat, hung around my shoulders. I tell people I have green eyes, but actually I have those weird two-tone ones that are more brown and green. I do have all my teeth, but coffee has taken the pearly sheen off them. Actually, no, tell a lie. I had a wisdom tooth extracted, and I do consider myself intelligent, though mostly about unintelligent things like Star Wars, big fan, and Transformers, bigger fan, except those live-action monstrosities. Gyms were a thing other people did. My only real claim to a sport was that I was a fairly decent archer, though I got plenty of exercise walking 2 exuberant dogs every day. So that's me, a hardcore geek, not a single virginal one I should point out, moderately healthy, who works a mundane job, though I was training to do something better, drives a car that's 10 years old, and though at the time of this writing has probably rusted to nothing, has 2 dogs, a girlfriend and her 3 children, affectionately dubbed Snot-Nose, Fat-Nose and Dirty Nose, watches too much anime and American pro wrestling, and is just old enough to have discovered the meaning of a balanced, boring diet. In other words, a 21st century Irishman. Truth be told, it's hard to remember much of that old life. I have come a long way since then. Where was I? Oh yes, the congealed vomit liver. Putting it into the box, I could only wish for the day to be done, and I could get out of there. I wish that most days, to be fair, and nothing had really gone wrong to make me wish it any more fervently than usual. I just was, inwardly monologuing about winning the lottery and the dramatic exit I would make handing in my notice. It was the classic way. Giving the boss the finger, telling him where to shove it, and swaggering out like a man who just scored a strike at 10-pin bowling. When it happened. I've read books of things dramatically happening, flashes of light, feelings of drowning or being crushed or falling, darkness and brightness or the feeling of being torn inside out. Nothing like that happened. 1 second, I was shoveling cold, bloody liver into a plastic container. The next, I was here. For such a monumental change, there was no precursor to it. No rumblings or flashes or bangs. No weird feelings of disjointedness. 1 second, I was doing meat counter work. The next, I was in a cart. And that was it. Kinda anticlimactic when I look back on it. I found myself on a cart sitting with 3 men in much different surroundings. Where before had been fridges and glass, a tiled floor and metal high ceiling, was now open mountain range, green pine trees and bright clear sunshine. Snow littered the boughs and rough grass through the stillness of the air robbed the cold of much of its bite. The air had a cleanness to it that I had never experienced as I took my first lungful of millions. Even living well out in the country, I had not experienced air like this. Though at the time I hadn't noticed it, I recall now just how crisp and clear it was. Ireland is mostly flat and we don't have huge mountains, so I'd never known genuine mountain air. It was wondrous and invigorating. With hindsight. At the time, it freaked me the fuck out. To my right was a powerfully built man, wearing a fur-rimmed grey cloak and mail armour. His hands were bound and a gag was wrapped around his lower face underneath a hooked nose, with intense eyes. The man opposite me on my left was rugged and handsome, also dressed in a blue-grey padded leather cuirass. His hair was about as long as mine, unkempt, blonde, and one side had a braid tied into it. His eyes, which now regarded me, were a clear blue. His features were strong and noble-bearing. His hands were tied with a rough, what looked like leather strips of cord. "Hey you," he said to me. His accent was indeterminable, sounding vaguely northern or Eastern European without quite being either. "You're finally awake." I blinked. Had I been asleep? "You were trying to cross the border, right?" "What border? There was a border? Did it sell books?" "You walked right into that Imperial ambush. Same as us. And that thief over there." He indicated with a jerk of his head the man next to him. This one was lanky and whip-thin, with greasy black hair and deep-set eyes. He was looking at the road behind him, but upon being addressed turned to look at the blonde speaker. "Damn stormcloaks," he growled, though it lacked menace. "What the fuck is a stormcloak?" "Skyrim was fine until you came along. The Empire was nice and lazy." Imperials, Empire. If Darth Vader showed up, I was going to have a meltdown there and then. If they hadn't been looking for you, I could have stolen that horse and been halfway to Hammerfell. Then he locked eyes with me. His face was dirty, especially around the eyes, mud or something heavily ingrained. And as well as looking like he hadn't washed, he smelt like it as well. All three men did. They smelt of hard work and long roads. The other two, it wasn't hugely unpleasant, but the thief, he looked and smelled desperate. You and me, you and I corrected mentally. We shouldn't even be here. It's those damn stormcloaks the Empire wants. We're all brothers in binds now, thief. The blonde spat the last word. It was true. My hands were also bound around the wrists by a heavy, thick cord that was almost painfully tight. My uniform, a mixed blessing, was gone, replaced with what looked like a canvas sack shirt that reached to my knees. And yes, in case you're wondering, my underwear was gone too. And ankle-high foot wraps that were shoes in only the broadest and loosest sense of the word. Taking the silver lining, I realized that the hat was gone as well. Our cart wasn't the only one. It was driven by what looked like a Roman legion auxiliary in leather armor and a leather hat, and a single brown horse. There was a similar cart ahead of us, and one just behind it. As if on cue of me noticing it, the driver, in a clipped, almost British tone, barked, "Shut up back there." I looked in the direction of the voice, but the other three took no notice. "What's with him?" the thief asked derisively, nodding in the direction of our gagged companion. "Watch your tongue," Blondie snarled. "You're talking to Ulfric Stormcloak, the true High King." Ulfric? The thief was shocked. The Jarl of Windhelm? Jarl, Windhelm, what the hell was going on? "You're the leader of the rebellion." Rebellion? Was Luke Skywalker going to show up now? It wouldn't be any more surreal if he did, unless he was riding a wampa, and had Admiral Akbar in a gold bikini, singing Ricky Martin songs, and doing a haka. Something awful seemed to dawn on the thief then. His face paled even more under the dirt. But if they have taken you... Oh gods, where are they taking us? "I don't know where we are going," Blondie replied ruefully, "but Sovngarde awaits." "Where?" The thief began muttering to himself, his voice close to panic. "No, this can't be happening. This isn't happening." Join the club, I thought. Blondie was looking ahead, and gazing in his direction, I saw a stone-walled town approaching. Several wood and thatched buildings were ahead past a wooden gate. A round tower was in view, in the center made of the same grey brickwork. Behind it, what looked like a keep of some kind. Banners were hung all about. "Hey," Blondie asked, "what village are you from, horse thief?" "Why do you care?" A Nord's last thought should be of his home. His tone was gentle, as if he was soothing the man. Home. Not a bad place to think about. "Wait, what? Last thoughts? What the fuck did that mean?" My mouth still hadn't opened. It was as if my lips were glued together. "Rorikstead. I'm from Rorikstead." Blondie didn't get a chance to answer, as our driver shouted anew. "General Tullius, sir! The headsman is waiting." Headsman? Some kind of leader, I guessed. Maybe I could speak to him about this. If I could remember how to speak, that was. "Good," a new voice, I couldn't pinpoint the source, answered. "Let's get this over with." The thief started blurting out words. The only one I was able to grasp properly was divines. It sounded like a desperate prayer. The cart ambled through the gate and followed the mud and cobble path to the left. "Look at him," Blondie snapped. I was getting the impression this is how he talked, just snapped out sentences. It wasn't, as I was late to discover, but it seemed that way. "General Tullius, the military governor, and it looks like the Thalmor are with him." "Who?" Blondie was looking at a man I only got the vaguest impression of. Dressed again like a Roman legionary, sitting aside a horse, regarding the cart, particularly the cart I was in, with contempt. "Damn elves, Blondie continued on. I bet they had something to do with this. Now, he wasn't talking about me. Of course not, why would he? But in my head, it sounded like the elves had something to do with bringing me here. This is Helgen. Blondie sounded regretful of all of a sudden. I used to be sweet on a girl from here. I wonder if Elod is still brewing that mead made with juniper berries mixed in. Juniper berry mead. Sounds nice. Could sure have used a drink right about now. Even lager. No, wait. Nothing's ever so bad as to need a lager. Funny, he sounded anything but. When I was a boy, imperial walls and towers used to make me feel so safe. I heard a small boy talking behind me and turned to look. I locked eyes with an older man who was turning his boy around. His face was sorrowful as he ushered the child and himself indoors. The wooden entry shut with a decidedly final click. The carts entered a courtyard of straw and dirt. The tower walls were actually not finished or looked like something had happened to bring them down. And we were slowing down. Why are we stopping? Thief asked. Why do you think? Blondie looked at him, his tone both vaguely mocking and tired-sounding. End of the road. Good. Maybe that meant I could talk to the headsman and get myself out of this. Somehow. What language did I speak again? And why were these phantasms speaking the same language that I knew? Blondie looked at me, a strange respect on his face. Let's go. He began to rise. We shouldn't keep the guards waiting. I stood more on reflex than on actual thought. I was getting a really bad feeling in my stomach. Okay, a worse feeling. I knew my brain was rapidly trying to figure out what was going on here. Where was I? Who was I? What was happening here? How did I get here? And what in the nine hells was going on? No, wait, the thief was protesting again. We're not rebels. Face your death with some courage, thief. Blondie spoke behind me. I was too busy trying not to fall flat on my face dismounting the cart to truly react, but it seemed my stomach heard what my ears did not. It lurched violently as if I was about to throw up. There was a breeze now. It flapped the banners hanging above our heads, and I could feel it cutting through the long tunic I was attired in. I shivered in the cold. The tunic preserved modesty, but with nothing on underneath it, and arms and lower legs bare, it was hardly mountaineering clothes. The thief was still blabbering on, but I couldn't really hear him. My heart was hammering away in my ears. The four of us stood in a line facing two stern figures. One was female and was currently snapping orders. She was wearing full torso armor that looked like it was made of steel. A plumeless helmet covered a stern, hard face. The other was wearing a chainmail top and a leather skirt cut into wide strips to allow for ease of movement. A sword was belted at his side, and in his hands he held a piece of what I took to be paper and a quill, with black and white feathers. Blondie noticed this too as he snorted derisively. Empire loves their damn lists, he said to me. It was strange, but I was beginning to like him. Ulfric Stormcloak. The man with the quill spoke while simultaneously jotting something down. Jarl of Windhelm. The gagged man stepped forward and moved to the center of the courtyard, barely sparing a glance for us or the two officials in front of him. It has been an honor, Jarl Ulfric, Blondie said next to me. Ralof of Riverwood. Blondie stepped forward. So that was his name. Riverwood. Sounds nice. Quillboy pronounced it Ralof. Ralof gave me a curt nod and went over to the courtyard to stand next in line by Ulfric. I couldn't see what was going on. A squad of Imperial, I guessed, soldiers were blocking my view. Lokir of Rorikstead. This was the horse thief. No, he blurted. I'm not a rebel. You can't do this. His voice was about 1 octave below full-blown panic. And as if on cue, panic set in. He bolted, heading back up the road we had just come in by. "Halt!" the woman screeched as I looked on in amazement. Lokia didn't stop. "Archers!" she shouted. 2 men drew bows from their backs, and as I watched they shot Lokia dead. Just like that, I saw a man murdered in front of my eyes. Lokia crashed to the ground, rolling over one of the arrows, snapping it along the shaft, the other seemingly immune to such treatment. Horse Thief lay still, the arrowheads obviously having done their job. "Anyone else want to try running?" Eyes wide, I looked at her. There was no hint of compassion or humor there. I shook my head like a dog shaking water. Wait. Quill and Paperman was looking at me, a curious expression on his face. "You there. Step forward." Legs acting on impulse, I did so, moving to face him as he regarded me with grey eyes that seemed more gentle than the situation warranted. "Who are you?" "Fionn," I blurted out, my tongue free at last to speak, and don't ask me why or what put it into my head, but I just had to add, "of the Silvered Bolt." Remember I said I was a Transformers fan? Well, see if you can figure out whose name I just paraphrased. Now that I had my tongue, it was suddenly eager to make up for lost time, and I was all too quick to want to blurt out everything. But Quill and Paperman cut me off. "You picked a bad time to come home to Skyrim, kinsman." "Kinsman? I wasn't a Roman!" "Captain, what should we do? He's not on the list." "Damn right I wasn't on the list. Okay, I was on several lists. Not like that. But this wasn't one of them. I knew damn well I wasn't on some freaky larper's wet dream come true list." I opened my mouth to say such, but she-bitch cut me off. "Forget the list," she replied. "He goes to the block." "What?" "By your orders, Captain." "I'm sorry," he said to me. "At least you'll die here in your homeland." "My where?" "This wasn't my homeland. My homeland was the wet green fields backwater countryside of the west of Ireland, not some snowy backwater stone and thatched town." "Follow the captain, prisoner." Numbly I did so. I don't know why I was so compliant. Shock, probably. The human brain moves remarkably fast at times, but this was not a normal situation. I was not in a regular incident. So without being told, my traitorous legs went with the woman, who was also quite short. I found myself standing beside my new friend Rayloff again. In front of me was a man dressed of some importance going by the cut of his armor. He was around the age of 60, with short-cropped grey hair and a craggy, weather-beaten face. His entire bearing screamed professional soldier. The captain took her place next to him. And then I got the term headsman. You're probably all thinking I was rather dim not to get it before this. But do remember, I was in quite a severe state of WTF mofo. Standing next to another woman in orange robes, feet planted squarely, was an honest-to-God, real-life headsman. He was huge, nearly 7 feet tall, with a massive single-headed and very sharp-looking two-handed axe. His face was covered by a black leather mask with only 2 very mean eyes looking through at the assembled ensemble of men, who, except for me, were all wearing those grey-blue cuirasses. General Tullius was talking. "Ulfric Stormcloak, some here in Helgen call you a hero, but a hero doesn't use a power like the voice to murder his king and usurp his throne." Ulfric mumbled something, but though the gag, it came out a hoarse grunt. "You started this war," Tullius continued. He seemed to be gathering into a self-righteous stride. "Plunged Skyrim into chaos, and now the Empire is going to put you down and restore the peace." As the sentence faded into the air, another sound followed it. It was both high and low, like a lion's growl that had been put through a trombone. No one around me knew where it was coming from, and all looked in every direction. As it faded, a bird tweeted close by as if in protest. What was that? A man, I never did learn who, asked. General Tullius seemed unconcerned, however. It's nothing. He waved his arm to emphasize his point. Carry on. Was this a normal noise in this place? Yes, General Tullius, Shevich retorted with a parade ground discipline. She saluted by bowing her head and placing a clenched fist over her heart. She turned to the cowled woman in orange. Give them their last rites. Last rites? Sweet fucking Jesus. I genuinely believe this cunt was going to execute me. The priest raised her hands to the heavens. As we commend your souls to the Aetherius, blessings of the 8 divines be upon you. Aetherius? What in the name of Christ was Aetherius? Okay, granted, I'm not a Christian. A pagan, actually. But like all good Irish folk, I could swear blind by every Catholic dogmatic figure going. And then the man to my left interrupted her. For the love of Talos, he snarled, walking forward and facing a 2-foot-high block of wood. Shut up and let's get this over with. As you wish. The priestess sounded rather insulted, but said nothing more. Come on, the men fairly shouted in contempt. I haven't got all morning. Shevich, of course it was her, stepped up behind the man and pushed him to his knees. A foot to the back shoved him forward as he laid his own head on the block of wood, which too many history programs made me recognize at once. He turned his red-haired head to the axeman. My ancestors are smiling on me, Imperials. Can you say the same? Again his words were laced with contempt. No one made a reply. With one move, the axeman raised his blade and it came crashing down, separating the man's head from his body with a spray of crimson blood. The head thudded into a wooden basket in front of the block as Shevich kicked his body to the side. I'd really like to kill that woman, I thought randomly. Shouts came from the people of the town. You imperial bastards. Justice and death to the Stormclocks. Seems opinions were quite divided. As fearless in death, this came from Ralof, as he was in life. Next! Shevich was suddenly pointing at me. The Nord in the rags! Oh, fuck! That low, high, keening sound came again, louder and closer this time. As one, all looked up, except me. I couldn't take my eyes off the headless corpse, not 10 feet from my feet. There it is again, Quillboy spoke up. Did you hear that? Shevich, though, was unimpressed. I said, she barked at Quillboy, next prisoner! I didn't move, but then Quillboy spoke up. To the block, prisoner, nice and easy. And again my traitorous legs took me forward. The fuck are you doing? My mind screamed at me in horror. Why are you walking towards this? But I couldn't stop. And as I halted, Shevich, oh how I really wanted to kill her, stuck a hard metal boot into the back of my knee and I fell. I felt myself pushed down and I could feel the previous poor fucker's blood soaking my tunic and pressing against my skin.